Alright everyone, Wednesday's video, I've got a big question for you. Do you have another day of derby gloating in you? Yeah, I thought so. We'll do a bit of that today, however there are a few other things I want to touch on as well. Just going to start with a couple of results that happened last night that I want to tell you about. And we start with a pretty rare event. Rangers beating Celtic. Yes, it was the Glasgow Cup final last night at the City Stadium. It finished 3-2 to our rivals. Daniel Cummins, Samuel Isiguzo scoring our goals, but it wasn't enough. It should be pointed out, however, that Rangers did have a number of first team players involved, where we didn't at all. The likes of household names, Matondo, Cortez and Inciala, all involved. Didn't make up any of those names. They were apparently first team signings made recently. Obviously Matondo scored against us. And to add to that, it was actually last season's Glasgow Cup final. I believe that they weren't able to find a free midweek to play it last season. So this was actually last season's Glasgow Cup final being played last night. This year's competition is ongoing at the moment. So who wants last year's competition? I mean, just let them have that. Elsewhere, the women's side lost last night. It was our final Champions League match and we finished the campaign with 0 points. A 3-0 loss away to FC Twente. A couple of pretty clumsy own goals in there as well from corners. One punched in by the goalkeeper Rogers and another one bundled in later on in the game. So not a great finish to our Champions League campaign. Obviously difficult. It was always going to be difficult. A hell of a step up for Elena Sidiku's side. We now turn our attention to domestic matters, the SWPL, trying to defend our title. Currently 5th in that league. Definitely a big five now in the SWPL. Glasgow City, Rangers, ourselves, Hibs and Hearts. We're 5th at the moment. Have games in hand on all of the teams ahead of us though. So that's shaping up to be an enthralling title race. Meanwhile, with the men's game, the fallout continues from our League Cup final victory over Rangers on Sunday. Big news. The SFA have apparently admitted that a mistake was made in not giving Rangers a penalty for Liam Scales' tug on Vaclav Cherny. SFA head of refereeing operations Willie Collum is set to cover this in the popular TV drama The VAR Review that I'm told is going to air later this week. So get the popcorn ready for that, everyone. The big news here is, regardless of what he or the SFA say, they're not going to take that trophy off us. Well, I probably shouldn't say that, knowing what they're like, to be honest. But yeah, Rangers clearly not taking it too well. Oh dear, how sad, never mind. By the way, Sunday's VAR officials, which was VAR Alan Muir and his assistant Frank Connor, have both been taken off the rota for this weekend's matches. So the SFA making big statements. And yeah, really just enjoying the meltdown that's continuing from our rivals. We really are getting a number of days out of it. Watched so much stuff over the past few days, from Chris Boyd to the new Rangers CEO, all just kind of singing from the same hymn sheet. And on the game itself, like, I don't know about you, but I've just watched like the highlights so many times. I've watched all the various vlogs. I think I've seen Dyson Maida's winning penalty probably close to 100 times now from various angles throughout the stadium. So everything is good. And yeah, Celtic are back in training this morning. I think I mentioned it yesterday that the manager, Brendan Rodgers, had given them a couple of days off after Sunday. We know the players were down. Some of them were down at the darts on... Was that Monday evening? Yeah, it would have been Monday evening. Clearly, it wouldn't have been after the game on Sunday. And back in training today, and they'll be building ahead to Dundee United. So maybe that'll just to refresh things slightly. I don't think our performances have been particularly good in recent weeks, but it's really not a bad place to be, winning trophies and getting positive results even on the European stage when you're not playing at your best. It's a sign of how far we've come on. So yeah, we will revisit the current affairs from tomorrow, start looking ahead to the Dundee United game. Always enjoy going to Tannadice, so I'm really looking forward to that game on Sunday evening. Obviously, we're going into the really busy festive period as well. However, I did just want to spend the rest of today's video discussing something I would say relatively interesting. You may disagree, that came out yesterday. Now, this is the latest plans put forward from organisers A22 about a breakaway European football competition that would clearly affect Celtic in some way. Now, a very quick history lesson, and you probably won't need this, but A22 are the people, the organisers, who organised the failed European Super League back in April 2021. You'll remember it. It was the one that made headlines throughout the world. 12 teams were going to leave their domestic leagues. I think the big six from England, plus Juventus, Inter and AC from Italy, Barcelona, Real Madrid, Atletico Madrid from Spain. So 12 teams were going to leave their leagues. They'd all signed up to join this new European Super League, and then we got the fan backlash, rightly so. The plans were scrapped. Now, A22 haven't given up on their plans entirely. They've now unveiled something they're calling the Unify League, which is much more like the current UEFA Champions League, Europa League, Conference League model than this European Super League that they proposed a number of years ago. I'm just going to run you through briefly, relatively briefly, about what they're saying. Now, they plan on creating men's and women's setups. We'll just stick with the men for this video, just to keep things as simple as possible. And their plan is to have 4 leagues: the Star League, the Gold League, which are connected in some way, but I'm yet to fully understand why they're part of the same circle there, because it seems like they're separate. Blue Leagues and the Union League as well. Now, can I just say, what horrendous names they've come up with? And I've got a lot of issues with this stuff, but we'll get to that. Now, the key difference here between this and their initial breakaway Super League plans is that this would work alongside domestic leagues. Clubs would qualify for the Unify League through their position in their domestic league, just the exact same way, basically, as how UEFA stuff works at the moment with the Champions League, Europa League, Conference League. There would be a total of 96 clubs from all 55 European nations taking part in this. As I say, 16 in the Star League, the Gold League, 32 in the Blue and the Union Leagues. Regardless of the competition you're in, each qualified side would basically be split into like a group of 8 teams where they would play every other team home and away. So Celtic would have 14 guaranteed European matches, 7 at home, 7 away, against 7 different sides. It would run from September until April, so a bigger chunk of the season, with the knockout matches taking place in April and May. So that's basically the idea. They'd continue with European matches happening during midweeks. The final would happen at the weekend. It would be a one-off match, as it is at the moment. Semi-finals would be a one-off match, and the quarterfinals would be 2-legged affairs. Now, I guess the question you might have is, where would Celtic fit into these plans? And if you read deep into the A2022's material, which was released yesterday, it actually explains how qualification would work. And this may be a little tricky to follow. And yeah, you kind of have to be watching this on YouTube, I guess, to be able to see what I'm talking about. Apologies to those listening on the podcast, which is available, everyone. Basically, the Star Tournament, which would be the top one, would have 12 of the 16 teams coming from the top 6 leagues. Now, 3 from the top league, 3 from the second league, then 2 and 2, and 1 and 1 from the next 4. Theoretically, we'd have a chance of being in this tournament as the champions of Scotland, but it seems like a much tougher ask to get in there than it is in the current setup with the UEFA Champions League. So it doesn't seem quite as open as the current Champions League. Seems more likely that Celtic would be playing in one of the lower competitions. Scotland, I think, currently ranked 11th in UEFA's coefficient. Certainly at the end of last season, we were, and 11th isn't even mentioned on that graphic there. So not entirely positive. They plan to fund all of this through what they call Unify, which is a streaming platform that would show all games to supporters, either for free with ads or not for free. It's not totally clear what their plan is there. Anyway, let's just skip to the conclusion because I feel like I'm losing myself, so God knows how you feel. They think they have something here, A22. They're emboldened by the verdict that you may have heard of from the European Court of Justice last December. That basically said that UEFA had abused its position in blocking the initial plans for the Super League in 2021. So basically, UEFA need to allow this to certainly be proposed. They can't block it, otherwise they're breaking European law. So this is going to be proposed. I just have a lot of issues generally with this. It doesn't appear to have like a USP. See, for as ridiculous as those initial European Super League plans were, obviously like breakaway league, cutting relegation, just having the same teams in there every season, regardless of how they fare, and why the hell were Tottenham Hotspur there as one of the top 12 clubs in Europe. I'd still love that explained to me by someone. But as ridiculous as those plans were, at least they had like some sort of shock factor. It was something different. There was a USP there. The top teams in European football, the biggest clubs in the same league, a league system for the first time in history. Like that was the USP there. This current setup just seems like the UEFA stuff, but not as good. Now, I would say the new UEFA Champions League format has been a big success. I really like this Swiss system. 8 matches, 8 different teams. It feels right. I think generally it's been received positively by fans. I know some fans, I heard Arsenal fans moaning about it. They don't matter. There's me offended two London clubs now. Generally, I think football fans have enjoyed this. It's been something fresh. And it feels like these plans are just a bit of a backward step. I mean, a league of 8 with teams playing each other twice, 14 matches, and they say there'll be not as many meaningless fixtures. It just doesn't seem quite right. Even when they talk about one, maybe their USP here actually is that they will have this Unify streaming platform where fans will be able to watch every match, and they make the point about how football supporters these days have to have so many different subscriptions to watch matches because there's so many different broadcasters. And listen, that's a fair point. It's one I've made a number of times, but like they're making out as if this Unify League is going to solve all that. And it's like, to watch Celtic in Europe at the moment, I guarantee you only have TNT anyway, because that's virtually the only channel we're on if you're in the UK. So you'd still, if we played in this Unify League, you'd still need Unify and you'd need all the domestic stuff. So you'd arguably need more broadcasting channels than previously. So that just doesn't make sense to me. And I think it would be the same for the majority of clubs. So stuff like that just I struggle with. And as I say, it's just like the current UEFA plans, very similar, but just not as good. And as I say, even the name of the league, the Unify League, it doesn't quite get you going the same way as the Champions League does. So yeah, what's going to happen? I don't see this taking off. I just think UEFA's too strong, and for something to be seen as a genuine alternative to UEFA's competitions, it's going to have to be something special with a real USP. Now, for me, an obvious USP would be get European football played on weekends. Because I know we might have an argument, and I don't know where you all stand on like Scottish football v European football. I know a lot of people say Scottish football will always be there. That should always be our bread and butter, the most important thing. I've certainly noticed a bit of a change this season with a lot of people, as much as obviously you want to win your domestic trophies. See Sunday, for example, that will obviously always be really important. I think this season I've noticed a bit of a shift in people looking at the Champions League as where we should really be judged. So for me, the more European matches Celtic play, the better. That's where I think we realise our full potential as a club, when we play against the big teams, the glamorous players, the big supports, the big arenas. That's the stuff that really gets me going as a football fan. So I don't think this Unify League stuff is going to take off. I think, however, it might force UEFA into changing things further with the Champions League, We know that initially when UEFA proposed this new Swiss system that started earlier this season, they wanted teams to play 10 matches each in the league phase. That was then whittled down to 8, I think because of fixture congestion. But you know for a fact UEFA are going to push again for 10 when the next cycle is sorted. That begins in 2027. Again, that's good news for me. More European matches is good news from a Celtic point of view. But I think it's... I think personally we're going to end up in a situation where possibly a third of our season, maybe even half of our season as Celtic fans is going to be made up by European matches, and then you're going to have the domestic stuff potentially playing second fiddle. Now, I don't know exactly what that would look like, but it just seems that's the way things are heading. European football is growing in influence as opposed to getting smaller, if you know what I mean. So, yeah, as I say, that might sound daft, the idea that Scottish football wouldn't become the most important thing for Celtic. But if you think about it, and if we were playing the same amount of matches in European football as we were in Scotland, European football probably would become more important to us all. But yeah, it's going to be interesting going forward. I'm sure you'll have plenty of thoughts. As I've said a few times, I'm not a fan of these Unify League plans, but I think they're worth highlighting because this is something serious that's going on. And who knows, things might get a little bit messy as we go forward. But at least Celtic are good and winning trophies and competing well and flourishing, some would say, on the European stage as well. Okay, everyone, thanks for watching and enjoy your Wednesday. I'll return this time tomorrow.